Hey folks, Kevin Mullen with Mullen Associates here. Want to give you a quick update on week 2 of tax season 2022. So of course we're doing 2021 tax returns in tax season 2022. And so for that 2021 return, I want to give you an update on a couple of items. First and foremost, we are based in the state of Texas. Texas does not have an state income tax. However, there are franchise tax requirements and other such items that may be required to file with the state of Texas if you own a business. Those Texas forms are actually not ready yet for us to file. And in fact, I have done some Alabama returns, I have done a New York return, I've done Colorado, several other state tax returns, of which their forms are not ready yet. So for whatever reason, we're finding that week 2 of tax season here, these states are lagging behind on getting the new legislative changes applied to their tax law and sent out to the software providers. So just keep in mind, if you've got a state return, it may be that even if you have everything ready and you should begin working with your tax professional, it may be that your tax professional won't be able to submit everything to the state just yet electronically. I don't have an update yet on which states and when they'll have it ready, but this is pretty atypical. And so my expectation, and I've been telling a lot of my clients, is maybe a week, maybe 2. I can't imagine it's much longer than that. So we'll see. The second piece I wanted to mention is in regards to your investment account financial statements. So financial statements based on a law change from 2011, the brokerage and clearinghouses have a couple of extra weeks to send these statements to you. Now, while it's not fun to have to wait longer to get these, it's actually hugely beneficial for us as taxpayers, because now the clearinghouses and the brokerage houses are required to report the basis in your stock sales. Before that, believe it or not, you were required to track the basis on this. That was the biggest headache in my job. It was a nightmare to be able to think about, what shares you bought at what time for how much, the opening and closing prices, etc. Awful. So as much as it's not fun to have to wait for these statements, you should thank the legislative changes that required these companies to maintain your basis, because it really is a benefit to you. But wanted to mention for week 2 here that we should start seeing some of these financial statements in a few days. Some of these do something a little tricky, and so it's important that you understand that some of these brokerage houses will, and some of the big ones even, will issue you a preliminary statement. The preliminary statement is not final, and usually it will say it on the 1099-B or the 1099 composite statement. It will say preliminary or initial, or pre-worksheet or whatever. It'll have some verbiage on there to tell you this is not the final document. And so what they'll do is they'll meet the IRS's requirements by issuing a preliminary form, and then they will tell you when they're ready to issue the final form. Usually that'll be sometime early to mid-March. So obviously I'm not a big fan of them doing that. It's just trying to work the system to make sure that they can get you correct information. It's to your benefit, I get that, but I'm not a fan of them working the system like that so that you have to wait longer to get your documents to get everything issued. Ultimately, at the end of the day, as long as the information is right, then we're not too upset. But keep that in mind that here pretty soon, these documents will start becoming available. Look for that preliminary warning on that document indicating that that's not a final document, because if we file with the preliminary statement, it almost always changes to some degree how they categorize income and that kind of stuff. And so that could come back to bite you. You could get a letter from the IRS, and nobody wants that. The other thing, mentioning the IRS, is that right now the IRS is incredibly far behind. Now, we did experience this last year as well, and the IRS ended up mostly making up for it for the 2020 tax returns in the year of 2021. This year, who knows? We'll see what ends up happening, but the IRS is starting behind again. That means phone calls and IRS correspondence via mail or fax are going to be hugely delayed in being able to get any requests processed, as well as paper filed tax returns. You really need to stay away from paper filing your tax return if at all possible. Now, in some cases, you have to, but if you can, I urge you to electronically file your tax return. That way you're kind of eliminating the human element at the IRS, because that's where all of the delays are coming from. So to recap, we've got some state tax forms in draft, meaning they're not ready to go yet. That could delay your filing. We're expecting financial statements here pretty soon, but keep in mind that you need to make sure you've got the final statement that you're working with on your tax return. And the IRS is super behind. Don't call them or mail them anything if you can help it. If you have to, then you got to, and you're going to have to slog through it. So hopefully this was helpful information for you, and look forward to our next update for the 2022 tax season.